through Advent, if you haven't been with us, we've been looking at the gifts that God gives us in Jesus, right? And we've been looking at that alongside some of these Old Testament characters as they were waiting for these gifts and looking forward to the gifts to come. We kind of were seeing what it's like because many of us are waiting for gifts. To give you a quick recap in case you weren't here, this isn't going to be on the test later, but here's where we did. Week 1, we talked about hope, and we looked at the story of Ruth and her mother-in-law, Naomi. If you remember, they had lost a lot of hope, and they didn't have very much reason to have hope, but they were able to find some anyway. Week 2, we talked about peace, and we looked at this prophecy from Isaiah, where Isaiah said, he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. This was long before Jesus was ever on the scene. Isaiah was saying this is the kind of guy that he's gonna be, so we know that he gives us peace. Week 3, we talked about joy. We looked at the story of Abraham and Sarah. They were getting older and older, and they didn't have this kid that God had promised them they would have a baby, and they were having a hard time. And then we saw Sarah laughing with joy at the birth of her baby. It just came a little bit later than she thought it was going to. Then week 4, this last Sunday, we talked about love from God in this moment when he revealed himself to Moses, when Moses said, God, I need to see you more clearly. And God showed himself. And basically he said, I am this everlasting and abounding love for you. So these are all stories of people in the Old Testament looking forward to the gifts that were here in part back then, but that would come fully realized with Jesus. And so now here we are in the New Testament times. Jesus has come. We know about the manger. Everything is great, but we still find ourselves waiting just like they did, don't we? Jesus has come, and yet many of us are still looking and waiting for our hope and our peace. We're still having a hard time holding on to joy, still not sure that we're deserving of love. We're still looking for Christ. So each week of Advent, we have lit these candles one at a time, right? We kind of say this thing of it's more and more light each week as we get closer and closer to the birth of Jesus, who is the light of the world. So today we light the Christ candle and we bow down in worship. We're going to get out of the Old Testament and go on into the New Testament today. We'll be in Luke 2, but just real quickly, Luke 2 is like the Christmas story. So if you're trying to figure out what to read later, Luke 2 is the one that you want. We're going to kind of just read through it and get a few things that we can see from the birth of Jesus and what he teaches us. So starting in verse 1, Luke 2, it says this. In those days, Caesar Augustus issued a decree that a census should be taken of the entire Roman world. This was the first census that took place while Quirinius was governor of Syria. Great name right there. And everyone went to their own town to register. Right, so everyone's got to go to their own town. You know that story. Verse 4 says, so Joseph also went up from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea to Bethlehem, the town of David. We're not going to get into this too much, but because we've been talking about all this Old Testament stuff, remember Abraham and Sarah had to have a kid because that's the line through which Jesus was going to come, right? And then Ruth and Boaz, remember we talked about that they had a kid named Obed, who had a kid named Jesse, who had a kid named David, who would grow up to be king. And that had to happen that way because that was the line that Jesus was going to come through, was through the line of David. And then now here we see the reason why they had to return to Bethlehem is because Joseph was from the house of David. So it all kind of comes together and all led to this point that God always had his mind on and his sight on, this birth of Jesus. So that's where we go. Go on to verse 5. It says, he went there to register with Mary, who was pledged to be married to him and was expecting a child. She gave birth to her firstborn, a son. She wrapped him in cloths and placed him in a manger because there was no guest room available for them. That's a good part, right? That's the Christmas story. And I just wanted to point out here, it says that she wrapped him in cloths. The ministers here in our town, we get to write a little devo for the newspaper every week. It's called Words to Live By. If you've never noticed it, it's in there. And I get to write the one for this week. And it just so happened, as I was writing it, because I had to turn it in, like a week and a half ago, I was looking at my Spotify Wrapped. And so I decided to write my Devo about Spotify Wrapped and about Jesus here being wrapped. I thought it was really clever until I realized I think the Venn diagram of people that read the newspaper and people who use Spotify, there's not a lot of overlap there, I don't think. I don't know. So if you don't already read the paper, you should. I've got a good Devo in there for Christmas this week. And if you do read the paper, Spotify Wrapped, it's too long to explain. I don't know, it doesn't matter. Just read it anyway. But if you read that and you thought, Wopsle, you've really missed your target audience here, I just want to confirm. I think that you're right, but I still stand by the truth that I wrote. even if it was missing the audience. So let's keep going. So that's a good setup, but we actually want to get to these shepherds. That's who we're going to focus on today. Verse 8 says, and there were shepherds living out in the fields nearby, keeping watch over their flocks at night. An angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terrified, of course. But the angel said to them, do not be afraid. I bring you good news that will cause great joy for all the people. And here is that news. Today in the town of David, a Savior has been born to you. He is the Messiah, the Lord. This will be a sign to you that you will find a baby wrapped in clothes and lying in a manger. So I think that the shepherds were most likely expecting this. Now, they weren't expecting an angel to roll up on the scene and to be scared on this night exactly, but I do think that they were expecting a Savior at some point. In fact, I think if you've watched The Chosen, which is kind of like a biblical account of a modern kind of TV show, I think they do a good job of whenever one disciple is recruiting another disciple, they don't have to explain the Messiah, what's going on, right? Everyone's expecting this to happen. And so all they're saying is like, hey, you know that guy you're waiting for? I think this is him. I think Chosen does a good job of showing that they weren't real like actively waiting for it, like on the edge of their seat. But they had been expecting because they had been told and they had read the prophecies and everybody knew that something was coming. And so here these guys were told this very simplified. I have good news that will cause great joy. There's a Savior, the Messiah, the Lord has been born. The gift has been delivered. And I don't know about you, I think about Christmas gifts and what it's like to wait for these gifts, right? Like you ask Santa for this thing back in November, and you just gotta like sit around and wait like 6 weeks for this thing to show up, right? And you're just like, or like us, we've had wrapped presents under our tree for a while now, right? Like I'm just looking at them and it's like, some of them I'm like, I know what you are. Like I should open it. I should get to experience you. Or some of the stuff I got for Amy, I'm like, oh, if I could just give her this gift, like this would be easier for her right now, right? We get these gifts and we wait for them in this 6 weeks and it's just an agonizing 6 weeks of waiting. The wait is almost over, friends, for most of those things. Think about maybe on a little bit bigger scale, though. Some of you have been waiting for something for a very long time. Some sort of peace or a plan that God might have for you or some kind of blessing, right? Some of you have been waiting on God for years for this gift, this thing that you need or that you want. So you're like, yeah, waiting 6 weeks for Christmas is easy when I've been waiting for years for this thing. Well, these Israelites and these people that followed God in the Old Testament, and likely these shepherds, had been waiting for this Messiah for thousands of years. And we can't even comprehend that because we don't really pass down the things we're waiting for to other generations. But that's what they did. In fact, they had been waiting in silence for 400 years at least. Between 400 and 500 years after the last prophet and before Jesus showed up, they're still just waiting. And so as hard as it is for me to wait to open my Christmas presents, I wonder, how do you think that these people felt after waiting for that long? They've been waiting and waiting, and they probably maybe part of the time were actively waiting, and then after a while, they're just passively waiting. And then there had to have been certain people that are like, I'm not sure even if what we're waiting for is even gonna happen anymore. There had to have been some people that were right on the verge of just giving up hope altogether because they had been waiting for such an impossibly long time. They might have just thought, well, we've gotten everything that we're going to get from God, and that's it. I kind of think about the Christmas Story, right? It's a little spoiler alert if you haven't seen this 50-year-old movie. There's this kid, and he wants this Red Ryder BB gun the whole time, and he's trying to convince his teachers and his parents. He even goes to Santa himself, and he says, I want this BB gun, and everyone tells him the same thing, right? You shouldn't get it. You'll shoot your eye out, right? And so Christmas morning comes, and he goes down, and he opens up all the presents. If you've seen the movie, he opens up, and guess what? There's no BB gun. He had been waiting, certain that that was when the BB gun was going to show up. And he gets there and he opens it up and it didn't happen. He knew it would happen. It didn't. He knew what he was waiting for, and what he was waiting for wasn't there. I had to feel like maybe that's where these shepherds were. Maybe a lot of people that were expecting Jesus were in that moment. Now, spoiler alert on the Christmas Story, guess what? They found a hidden gift over here and no one knew where it came from. And That was the gun. It was almost like after he had given up hope, after what he thought and how he thought it was going to happen didn't happen. Well, now it did happen, just in a different way. I kind of think maybe that's how these shepherds were. I don't know if they were actively hoping or if they had given up hope, but now this thing that they expected, that they weren't sure was ever going to happen, now these angels say, hey, it is here and it did happen. And you're not going to shoot your eye out with this baby Jesus, don't worry. So let's go on and skip down to verse 15 and see what their response was. It says, when the angels had left them and gone into heaven, the shepherds said to one another, well, let's go to Bethlehem and see this thing that has happened, which the Lord has told us about, right? Of course. So after all this, they say, let's go and receive this gift that has finally been given to us. And I like to kind of put ourselves in this situation. If we put ourselves in this situation as these shepherds, I think we would all say, yeah, we would rush away to see the newborn king too, wouldn't we? Of course. If we were out doing our work, doing our thing, taking care of our flocks, and someone said, hey, there's a newborn king over here, we would pack up everything and rush away to see him. And I think we like to think that that's true about us. But I don't know that we would rush away to see this newborn king. I think we would rush off if we heard that there was a gift, that he had a gift for us, right? A gift of this hope or joy or peace or love that we've been looking for. If he had a blessing we've been waiting on or a healing that we desperately need. If he had something for us, well, yeah, I'm going to rush over there to get that gift. But would we rush off if all that was waiting for us is a newborn king? I don't know that we would. I heard a really challenging quote this week. You've maybe heard it before. And I want to share it with you, but in order to understand this quote, we got to have some backstory that you probably know or remember, but maybe it's been a while, so I need to refresh your memory. Back in the Old Testament, the first king appointed by God was a guy named Saul. Not the Saul in the New Testament that would become Paul. This is a different guy. Saul, King Saul, he was the first king of the people of God. He started out pretty good, and he didn't end up so good. But while Saul was king, this young guy named David showed up on the scene. And the first thing he did is slay Goliath. Now, David was so young and inconsequential, he wasn't even on the battlefield to fight. He was taking lunch. He was door dashing out to the battlefield, and he was like, what's going on out here? This guy's yelling? And so he went and killed Goliath. That was his first thing on the scene, right? Well, Saul started to drift from the Lord's plan, and he was tormented by these dreams and was kind of maybe going insane. His mind wasn't going well. And so David was a really good musician. And so Saul had him brought in to play some music to try to soothe this torment that it was going through in his mind, right? He needed some help, and he allowed David to come in and play this music for him. And Saul then had David in charge of a large part of the military, and David went on to fight many battles. He was finding a lot of victory. So David kind of came in and was seeing a lot of success. And Saul was a pretty big fan of David for the first part there. David would go on to marry Saul's daughter even. So somewhere in there, God decided that David should be the next king. He was exhibiting all the things that a man of God should and that you would want a king to be. So God said, David needs to be king. He's gonna be king. And that's when everything changed for Saul. Because Saul didn't want to allow David to become the king. So now you have that story fresh in your mind about Saul and David. Let me read you this quote. Some say it's from A.W. Tozer, but we can't really attribute it to him. So I have on the screen, it's gonna say maybe A.W. Tozer. We don't know. But here's the quote, it's good. We often treat Jesus the way Saul treated David. We want him to slay giants and sing evil spirits away, but we don't want him to be king. Right? Merry Christmas. I hope you're having a good time, but I do hope that this stings just a little bit. We want the things that God can give us and the gifts that he so generously pours out on us, but we don't always want him to be on the throne of our lives. This whole month we've been talking about these gifts of God that he gives us, that he wants us to know more about his love, and he pours it out on us abundantly. And I'm still convinced that God is in the gift-giving business. He has more for us than we could ever fathom. But if all we want is the gifts that God has for us and we don't want him, then what we really want is a cosmic vending machine, right? It stays over there and doesn't bother us too much, but whenever I need something, I can go hit the button and get what I need out of it and then go on about my life without having to worry too much about it. So many of us, find myself here, not on purpose, but accidentally drifting to this situation where I'm telling God, God, you sit over there quietly until I need something. And then I need you to show up exactly whenever I need you to do something and do exactly what I want. But here's the truth I have for you today, friends, is that the gift that God has for you is Him. It's God. It's Himself. And if that was the only gift God ever gave us, His presence and ultimately His sacrifice on the cross, if that's all He ever gave us and He left us completely alone other than that, it would be enough. But He chooses to give us that gift. And then once we receive it, He has so much more. Grace upon grace, just abounding, way more than we could ever deserve. So much love that even when we think we have a picture of it, it's so much bigger and more than that. Peace in the midst of our worst day and our most awful trial. Somehow God can come in and still find a way to give us peace with an unimaginable loss, with unfulfilled expectations. While we're waiting on these promises, God continues to dole out these gifts, and we're thankful for it. But ultimately, if the only gift He gave us was His proximity to us and His sacrifice on the cross, it would be enough. That's the gift. So we want to see what these shepherds did with this gift. So they leave what they're doing and they go, they say, if there's a newborn king, we are ready for a newborn king. Now they didn't like the real king that they had, so they were kind of ready to go. So they said, yes, we're going to go worship this king. And then what happened? Let's get the next verse 16, it says, so they, meaning the shepherds, so they hurried off and they found Mary and Joseph and the baby who was lying in the manger. And when they had seen him, they spread the word concerning what had been told them about this child, and all who heard it were amazed at what the shepherds said to them. So what did the shepherds do when they received the gift? And when they realized it and when they saw it, is they went and they told everybody. I remember whenever I was younger, I think this is more of a young person thing. All morning we'd get up, we'd open presents, everything was great, right? But then usually around early afternoon, you start to call everybody. Hey, what'd you get? Hey, did you get the Nintendo, right? Like, hey, how many Hot Wheels did you get? How big was the slime thing? How mad is your mom at the thing that your dad got you, right? We would pick we put all this stuff together. We would call, we want to know, what'd you get? Here's what I got. Dude, come over, I got a drone. Let's wreck it in 1 minute, right? Like, we would go crazy because we were so excited about the gifts that we had received. And that's just junk that's in a landfill somewhere now. These shepherds received this gift of this good news, and they said, we have to go tell everybody this good news that we've received. And so they went out. Much more important than us calling about the slot cars that we got is these guys going out and telling everybody about the gift of God in the manger. So here's what I hope that we would do, is that we would take seriously that through this book that we've studied all this month, we see the gifts of God. These little gifts that He gives us in the middle of our life. And we see the grand gift of God of Him coming and being born in a manger and growing up to die on a cross. We see these gifts of God, and I would hope that we would be just as excited about talking about what God's been doing in our lives as we are about the cool stuff that we get for Christmas this year. I think sometimes when we talk about sharing the good news of Christ, it's like you need to take somebody by the head and explain by the ears, right? And explain to them the ins and outs and the intricacies of Jesus and how He's a part of the Trinity and all that. That's not what I'm asking us to do. I don't think it's what the shepherds did either. I think it's just saying, God's been so good to me, and here are the gifts that He's given me. No one's going to argue with your story, right? Just share what it is that you've had. This month at the church, at my church, we've learned so much about gifts. God is so good. Maybe that's what it is. It's just telling people and sharing with them what it is that you've experienced. Passing it on to one, maybe to two. Maybe those people end up passing it on to somebody and somebody else. Sharing about the gifts that God has given us. So that's how we're going to end our time today, is by passing around this light to show symbolically what happens whenever we pass around the good news about the gift that God has given us. So here in a moment, we're going to sing, and I'm going to light this candle off of the Christ candle. And then just with one candle, we're going to pass around and light up the room. Let me tell you kind of functionally, this is always helpful. All right, as you light your candle, as we pass the light around, just leave it lit, hold it, look at it as you sing with the band, and then at the end, we'll kind of all blow them out together, and I'll tell you what to do with them at that point. So let's share the good news of the gift we've received. Before you blow it out, if you didn't yet, you should turn around and just look. I love to see faces lit up with this candle and how many of us there are. And some people you know well, some people you don't. And that's what I think it looks like when we pass on the gift, is all of us passing on a little light that we have. So, okay, be careful, but you can go ahead and blow out your candle. Thank you all for being here, for spending part of your Christmas with us. It's really special that you would be here, and I hope that this is only the beginning of a great night and a great day tomorrow you have celebrating the birth of Jesus. Let me leave you with a blessing for this season and for the ending of this year before you go. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. Hey, if you only know one thing about our church, we want you to know this. Around here, we're all about two big things. Number one, loving God as a community. That's what times like this are about. Number two, loving people in our community. That's what passing on our light is about. So we hope you will be a part of that. We'll see you this Sunday, or we'll see you next year. Have a good one. Have a Merry Christmas.